Good Wednesday evening, everybody, and welcome to Direct Line Live. My name is Jackie Saxton, and I am joined by my co-host, Mark Unkefer, and our very special guest, Maryland Federation of Republican Women Legislative Chairman, Ella Ennis. Ella, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Pleased to be with you.
And we're so happy to have you. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Maryland 2023 legislative session that has started today. And you're going to get to tell us a little bit about what we can expect.
Well, I think we can expect a huge amount of very liberal legislation to be introduced. We have heard that the Speaker will reintroduce the bill for a constitutional amendment on a Declaration of Rights to Reproductive Liberty. We understand that the Governor Moore will propose a service program for high school seniors for 1 year of paid service after high school. And the Senate President and the Speaker have said they'll work on how to fund such a program. We will see legislation on voting, I'm sure, on trying to loosen requirements. We will also see bills to have voter ID, which Delegate Long has already put into the hopper, HB 35. And I think that we will see bills on dealing with police and correctional officers and trying to strengthen further what the legislature passed last year regarding any ill treatment or misuse of force by police. I think that there will also, we've heard that there will also be a death with dignity bill, which would approve assisted suicide. I think economy and energy, the continuation of the Climate Solutions Now Act provisions to strengthen them. I think that those are going to be very prominent this year. We have seen that the Senate President has chosen to realign two of his committees. One of them, the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, is now going to be called Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. And part of its portfolio that dealt with health matters is going to be transferred over to the Senate Finance Committee. It's going to be a number of new chairmen, so there'll be a lot of changes of emphasis, I think, in that manner. I think there will also be bills that deal with critical race theory and with reparations, with this movement towards the idea that we should have reparations for past offenses against African Americans and others in previous decades or previous centuries. So those are some of the things I think are going to be prominent this year.
Well, if I could just jump in, Ella, you have been an absolutely tremendous resource, you and the Federation, in both first identifying bills that Republicans should be concerned about, and being our kind of early warning, process, but then secondly, done a really great job of rallying Republicans to go to Annapolis and testify at the right time. And so both things have been really tremendous resources, not just for the Federation, but and for Republicans generally, but not just for Republicans, but for conservatives and really centrists as well, given what the legislature has been tending to do. And now that we don't have a governor with the veto pen, or we have a governor who won't be using the veto pen for the things that we care about, you're about as close as we get to our last best hope. What do you think?
I'm sorry. I didn't get that last sentence.
I would say you're close to being our last best hope. I'm being, I guess, a little facetious, but we're faced with a really daunting legislative environment, aren't we?
Yes, it is. It's going to be a much more difficult environment without Governor Hogan as there to veto bills. So it means that conservatives, Republicans, independents, and Democrats who don't go along with the very liberal agenda need to be very active this year. One ways that one can be active is to go to the General Assembly website, which is www.mgaleg.maryland.gov, and sign up for an MGA account. It's a little logo in the right-hand corner up on the website, and you set up an account, and then you can set up a tracking list. So you go through the list of bills and pick out the ones that you're concerned about. And then you say you want to receive an email each morning from Legislative Services, and it tells you what the status of that bill is. It'll tell you when the hearing is going to be. It'll tell you when a committee votes on it, and it helps you to keep abreast of what's happening. And this gets to be very important as the session goes along. The other thing is at that website, under meetings or under committees, you can access the list of hearings and the dates and the times and the bills are going to be heard. If you want to testify on the bill, and this year the House of Delegates has decided they're going to have a buy system, one where you can come and speak in person or you can speak virtually. And you have to sign up 2 days before the hearing between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. at that same MGA website. And when you go on there, you'll see the hearing, the committees be by committee name, and then it'll have the hearing or the bills listed. You just click next to the bill that you want to speak to, and then you put your come over to the right hand side and you click on whether you're favorable or unfavorable, and then whether you want to give written testimony, oral testimony, or both, in person or by virtual. They will not let you change your virtual or in person on the day of the hearing. So when you sign up 2 days ahead of time, you got to make sure that's how you want to testify. But you can provide that testimony both in writing and in person. And that helps to make the committee members know that you're seriously either in favor or opposed to a bill, or if you feel it needs to be amended in some way. Once that bill goes through the committee, if it comes out to the floor, then it's important that you notify your delegate, your senator, of your position on that bill. And you can follow the action when if it goes through the House. Let's say it's a House bill, it goes through the House, then it's got to go over to the Senate. They'll have a hearing again. So you have two opportunities to impact what's going on. For Maryland Federation of Republican Women members, I put out a weekly status report, not on every bill, but on bills that I am aware that the members are interested in or concerned about. And that gives you kind of a heads up that the hearing is going to happen at such and such a time. And any member who wants to receive that, they just have to send me an email and I'll add them to my list. And we offer that to the clubs. You can share it with your friends, with your family, with your neighbors, anybody who is interested in our concerns. That's an effort that we make to help members understand what's going on during the legislative session. And we'll put out an alert when there's a bill that's coming up for a very important vote, like for third reader, so that members can call. We have had a text alert system, and we're planning to put that back into practice this year. But I also send emails so that people will know that they need to contact their legislators now, or the members of the committee if it's still in the committee.
So definitely all the FRW women out there, if you're not on Ella's email list, make sure you get on that list so that you can stay up to date. So Ella, can you talk a little bit about MFRW's legislative committee and what you guys do other than put together that digest?
Right, right. The committee is, it's not, like a formed committee of 10 people. It is open to all members. We have some people who are more active than others, and we have tried to have phone call, conference calls several years with in-person meetings during the all the COVID problems. We didn't have any in-person meetings, but we are meeting we have a group of people who are coming tomorrow to the legislature, and we're going to hand out to each legislator's office our set of legislative priorities for 2023. And then we will have a little meeting afterwards to talk about our strategy for testifying and for being active and being better informed on some of these bills. Now, what we do in the summertime, we've had what we call summer study for the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And during that time, we produced a number of educational brochures, like one on critical race theory, on ranked choice voting, which we think will come up again in this year, regarding death with dignity and abortion, and on teen girls and rapid onset gender dysphoria, where you have girls being groomed by social media and others to consider that they should be boys. So we had some informational, educational brochures that our volunteer members have put together and the Federation has published. And we share them with all our members who are interested. And there are many issues, just including the very important issue of climate energy changes that we would like to do more on if we have enough members who are interested and have the time to work on it. So we meet when we can to coalesce around an issue and to define and try to make it the points about it, whether it's good or bad or how we might influence it, into a brochure that we can send and put on our website for the members to have. So anybody can be a part of it if they're interested.
Ella, you gave us a long laundry list of bills to be worried about in the session. Is there one in particular that makes you keeps you up at night with concern about what the Democrats may be trying to do?
That's hard to narrow down to one, but certainly the climate change issue is one that I think that we need to pay more attention to. The legislature and most of the climate activists seem very intent on using only alternative sources of energy, such as solar and wind, that are intermittent energy sources. They don't run, when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. And I think that we need, and our federation believes that we need to have a multiple energy sources, and that you can do that. I know that the climate activists are all very much against natural gas, but certainly nuclear energy should be a part of our portfolio. And if we think about it, 38% of our electricity that is produced in Maryland comes from one nuclear plant in Calvert Cliffs in Calvert County, where I live. And that plant has a permit that runs till 2035. The latest bill that was passed last year, Senate Bill 528, on the Climate Solutions Now Act, says that we shouldn't do anything to terminate that permit before it runs out. But there is no effort to go to the next generation of nuclear plants, including those who could use spent fuel for their fuel, so that it would not only provide us a pollution-free energy source, it would also deal with the issue of stored spent fuel. So I think that that needs to be a part of our energy portfolio, and we need to insist with the legislature that they not be myopic and think we only should have renewable energy. I don't know about you all, but on Christmas Eve, I received from the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative an email asking us to reduce our energy use from 10 a.m. on Christmas Eve to 4 a.m. on Christmas Eve till 10 a.m. on Christmas Day, because there was a drain on the energy, and because of our being connected with 13 other states through the PJM interconnection. And so in some of the Pennsylvania and other places where the snow and frigid weather was very, very bad, it was causing, they were afraid they were going to have blackouts. And so here is again a reason why we need to have multiple sources of energy and not follow California's lead. I think the governor paused the new regulations regarding automobile transfer to all electric vehicles by, I don't think it's 2035, but that's California's standard. And they wanted that we have connected ourselves legislatively to California standards. I think we need to decouple that. That's a very important thing, that Maryland go its own route for what is best for us, and not be put in the position of California where you have blackouts regularly. Because if we start saying all automobiles have to be electric, you've got to have a huge increase in the capacity for electricity and for transmission lines, which the PJM has already said in the future we're going to have to spend a lot of resources on. So that to me is a huge, huge issue that we have to face.
So we talked earlier about how we're definitely, as Republicans, at a disadvantage, no longer having the governor's mansion. Can you talk about what you think the Republican priorities are going to be this session, since we're going to be mostly on the defensive?
Well, I think, well, I do think that the Republicans will be concerned about the energy issue. They're going to be concerned about taxes. Delegate Matt Morgan plans to put his bill in again to freeze the annual increase in the motor fuel tax that goes up due to inflation. And there are other bills that deal with taxes that I think that they will try to freeze, or like the sales tax, rather than allowing those to increase, because that in a time of inflation that really hurts particularly retired people. Education is another issue that I think is going to get a lot of attention. The implementation of the blueprint is really a state takeover of education, and it's very much oriented towards a bureaucracy versus the emphasis on having every child read and do math on grade level. And I think Republicans want to see every child be able to read and do math on grade level, and that we should have order in the classroom. Those are the things that I'm aware of that they're going to be pushing.
So I guess the next question to ask you about is, you referenced taxes. Are there particular taxes that you think that the Democrats are more likely to be trying to focus on increase? Is it income? Is it sales? Is it, of course, they had the digital tax that was found unconstitutional. What should we be worried about there?
I apologize. I need you to tell me that again.
Sure. Which taxes do you think are in the most danger of being possibly increased?
What taxes might be increased?
Yes.
Well, we know the gas tax will go up every year because
Right.
it's already automatic. There have been talk about increasing the upper levels of the income tax, but I haven't heard, truthfully, I have not heard specifically what taxes they're going to try to increase.
That's good news.
Yeah, it will certainly be interesting since Westmore did say that he's not
right.
going to
We have because this is a new legislature, it's a new term. There were no pre-filed bills posted on the General Assembly website, so we're behind because only today evening they began to post those bills. So in the next week or two, we will have a much better idea of how many bills that are going to be put forward to impact taxes. And part of that's going to be what the new governor's budget projects, which we don't have yet, but we will know within a few weeks.
So one of the major pieces of legislation that passed on the ballot in 2022 was the legalization of recreational marijuana coming this summer in Maryland. Do you think that we're going to see some more legislation around marijuana going into this session?
We'll have to work on the implementation of they're going to legalize marijuana. And I don't think all of that's going to happen this year. Some of the legislators have been very concerned that minority businesses have an equal opportunity to reap the financial benefits of marijuana being legalized. The people in the police and the law enforcement have to deal with, will you be able to determine if someone is intoxicated with marijuana or some other drug versus alcohol, and be able to, to be accurate at doing. It's going to be a huge issue on how do you keep children from having access to marijuana products that aren't necessarily smoking it, but like brownies or other edibles. And we already, we know that sometimes children do get a hold of these and it can be very dangerous. So there's a whole lot of unfinished business when it comes to this legalization of recreational marijuana. And the sale of it, the growing of it, how many people can grow so many plants and what they can do with it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of work on that.
So you made reference to some election law changes at the outset. We talked about there may be proposals on the Republican side for ID voting. What do you hear? You mentioned ranked choice voting as well. Are there other proposals that we should be watching on the election law side?
Well, yes, there will be efforts made to somehow loosen the requirements of the election laws. There are municipalities who want to age from 18 to 18. That is something that has been actively considered in Montgomery. Has been proposed again for Montgomery County. One is to say that you should have ranked choice voting. So look at a list of voting for the one you think will do the best job. You rank them in order of your first, second, and third, or fourth, depending on what the rules would be. And then if no candidate receives 50% of the vote initially, then they go to the lowest ranking candidate, and they are this ranking candidate is eliminated, and the people who voted for that lowest ranking candidate and choice will now be added to the first choice of everybody else. And if that doesn't get to 50%, then you eliminate the next candidate till you get 50%. The problem with this is when you make your choices of 1, 2, 3, 4, you have no idea of of who is going to be the top two candidates. So if the real concern is that you want somebody who gets a majority of the votes, 50% of the votes, then have a runoff election, because then the voter can be informed and vote for the best of the two top candidates. So that's our objection to ranked choice voting. Every place where it has been put in place, it ends up with, you could have a Republican ahead on election night, but by the time you go through 2 or 3 iterations, it will be a Democrat, because they're more likely to have 3 Democrats and 2 Republican candidates. You're always going to end up with a Democrat elected. The other part of this is the second bill that Montgomery County has would have the state pay for additional voting machines in Tacoma Park if they were to adopt ranked choice voting, so that, because they admit that it will take longer to vote, you will have fewer people voting all the way down the ballot. And so local candidates are going to be put at a disadvantage by having people not vote on those offices because they get tired or don't have time or whatever.
Right.
So, and what was really beyond having Tacoma Park have a state pay for this, which means all the taxpayers, not just those in Tacoma Park, would pay for this. So that's another bill to watch out for.
In addition, that same municipality we're talking about is Rockville is considering allowing illegal immigrants who live in the city of Rockville to vote in local elections, something that was legally struck down in New York just last year.
Well, in some of the municipalities, including Tacoma Park, they allow non-citizens to vote. Now, their voter roll for the town elections are kept separate from that for the state. But what the bill that I was speaking about would allow them to be in the state-sponsored ballot. Then you would have a real problem that you could have non-citizens voting on the statewide ballot.
So one of the activities that the Women's Federation does every year to lobby is Red Scarf Day. And could you tell us when that is and explain a little bit more about what is involved with it?
Yes. Okay, March 7th is our MFRW Legislative Red Scarf Day. It is where we invite all our members, 1,500 of them, to come to us. Obviously, everybody can't come because of work or whatever, but many people do come. We usually have a caucus meeting with the Republicans in the House and the Senate in the early morning, about 8:30. We go to the legislative session at 10 o'clock, and then we go and have a brunch, which is free to our members. We invite all the Republican legislators to come to that meeting. They have a chance to speak and tell us what they think is most important that's happening in the session. And then they have a chance to informally talk with their members from their community. And then we will often have a presentation by, it might be presentation budget, or it might be a panel discussion on an issue such as marijuana legalization or voting or a health issue, so that it helps to inform the members as to the details of why we are in favor opposed to a particular issue. We usually go over our legislative priorities that day, talk about the upcoming hearings, and encourage members to participate, and not only to testify, but also to write letters to the editor or to call into podcasts or talking shows, so that is a broader outreach to the community, such that the ordinary citizens trying to just get through their day aren't always aware of.
So, are there
And
any
we all
other
wear
particular
red scarves, so they know.
Are there any other issues going into this session that we haven't covered yet that you want to make sure that everybody knows about?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
That's okay. Are there any other issues going into this session that you think that we should know about that we haven't talked about yet?
Now, well, I think I've probably touched on most of the big ones. The position-assisted suicide issue is a very sensitive issue that I think will be prominent this session, and one we really need to think about carefully, especially after hearing in Canada, where they have that people who are poor are being encouraged to take their own life if they can't pay for their medicines. And for people who are ill, we should be honoring their life rather than trying to get them to end it.
Absolutely. So we have 15 extra minutes. So I figured we'd take the time to talk about the Women's Federation. There are a lot of women, Republican women, who I don't know how aren't involved in MFRW yet. So can you talk a little bit about what MFRW has done for you and how you got involved and why other women should get involved?
Right. I believe we have 20 clubs at this point. We have your virtual club, which is fairly for people who are working and maybe can't get there to a daily meeting. And I have participated in a couple of your meetings where your speakers are excellent. So anyone who can't come to a regular meeting, they should certainly take a part in your Empowered Republican Women. In the clubs offer you both daytime and evening clubs, and both the friendships and the professional learning that you undertake when you become a member of a club is very helpful. And when you join a local Republican Women's Club, you are also a part of the state federation. Your club is a member of the Maryland Federation of Republican Women, and the Maryland Federation of Republican Women is a part of the National Republican National Federation of Republican Women. So there are benefits that you can, educational benefits at our conferences, and at the national level, they have campaign schools. They have a website that every week they put out a weekly update of issues that are happening in Congress, which we don't all have time to be very well informed about. And the state federation helps to coordinate among the clubs so that you pay your dues to the local club, but you are a part of all three of these organizations.
Cool. Mark, do you have any other questions for Ella?
No, I think we've done. We're looking forward, though, Ella, to have you on during the session, maybe on a monthly basis. I think that's what the plan is right now. And obviously, as we can, if we have specific alerts, we can certainly pass that on during our shows. But maybe in another month or so, we can have another show and bring up to date what we've learned then. Isn't it true, though, that much of the activity takes place at the very end, in the last couple days or the last parts of session?
Well, yeah, some of it, okay. And it was interesting when Governor Hogan was governor, they wanted to pass the bills before the end of the session because they didn't want him to have the chance to veto something that they couldn't override. With a Democratic governor, they may not feel the need to have the bills passed, like 2 weeks before the session ends. But it's natural that the process is somewhat long, so it's not unreasonable that a lot of it does happen towards the end. You start out fairly slow with a few bills getting through committee, and then you have to pass the budget before other bills can finally pass if they have any financial impact. So some of this is just built into the process, and sometimes they kind of put something in late in the session and sort of sneak it through or try to. That may not be fair to say, but Sometimes it does seem that way, but at any rate, yes, the pace picks up. It gets very rapid at the end, and so we try to keep up with it. And what you find is that you can't just wait for the next day for legislative reference to send you the information about the vote. You need to go onto the website and look at floor actions so you can see what happened 2 hours ago. It will tell you whether the bill passed or failed. You may not be able to see the vote, but you will be able to know what the action was. So it does get very hectic towards the end.
But we know that you and your side hustle will keep us all up to date.
Yes.
So, like Ella mentioned a little bit ago, we are trying to promote the Maryland Republican Women Empowered and, of course, all of our women's federation clubs. I have my email in the ticker there, and you've seen it throughout the course of the show. So if you're interested in getting involved with us, please send me an email. We really want to get as many women involved as possible and keeping up to date with what's going on so we can make an impact on our legislature. Ella, thank you so much for joining us. And like Mark said, we're looking forward to having you on throughout the session to keep us apprised of everything that's going on.
Okay, I would be glad to. Thank you.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
me.
For watching. Yep.
A
Go ahead,
new
Mark.
experience for me.
Well, we're glad to have it. We want to get the word out because of what you do is such a tremendous resource within. Well, as we talked about, not just for Republicans, but for Republicans especially. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks everybody, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you.